in case there's a screw up. The other, in case there's a screw up, maybe the other camera will cover for it. So keep my fingers crossed here. Anyway, I'll continue with this novel. I don't know if the first, it looked like the first one that I made didn't, that the audio didn't work. So hopefully this one will work here. Okay, I'll continue here. I'll go back a little bit here. Patrolman Bill quickly went for his gun while shouting into his walkie-talkie, "Get out of the cab, Rita! Get out of the cab! He's holding up a device in his hand and talking like a terrorist." Rita Custom desperately leaped for the exit. "Hurry, Rita, hurry!" he shouted as he tried to get a good aim on the trucker. She tripped and fell out of the door, finding herself on the ground between the truck and the Exxon gas truck. The fall onto the pavement knocked the breath out of her. Back in the scaled house station, the young trucker said, "I reveal my innermost self unto Allah." He reached up and pulled at his hair, stunning all in the room to find out that he was actually a dark-haired person and that the blonde hair was a wig. Rita painfully rolled over to the Exxon truck. She painfully used it to pull herself up off her feet while shouts from her friend over the walkie-talkie continued desperately to try to motivate her away from the truck. "Allahu Akbar!" shouted the young trucker. Right when Bill was about to squeeze off a shot on his pistol, a bright flash lit up the room, followed by a loud explosion that blew out the windows, knocking everyone to the floor. The Exxon truck was now billowing huge clouds of fire and black smoke with not a sign of Rita around. Inside the DOT scale station, the dog was no longer barking. It was now cowering and shaking in the corner. Officer Bill found himself Officer Bill found his gun out of his hand. When he grabbed it and went to point it at the young trucker, he noticed the two remaining DOT attendants standing like statues as their eyes were fixed in one direction. Officer Bill looked in their direction, and he also became statuesque when he saw another device in the hands of the young trucker, now without the blonde wig. This latest device had a wire connected to what looked like an open vest, revealing what seemed to be a vest mostly made of dynamite. The young trucker was right in the middle of shouting Allahu Akbar, but before the wild-eyed trucker could finish the Arabic word for all is greatest, the highway patrolman officer found himself uncontrollably shooting off every bullet as fast as his finger trigger would let him, shouting "Die" on each pull of the trigger. "Die, die, die, die," he roared Officer Bill on every shot he fired. When clicking proved Officer Bill was out of bullets, a glimmer of hope entered his mind and those who saw the bullets striking their target. Officer Bill proved a very good aim. However, although the strange trucker was now wheezing badly with a whistling sound coming from his throat, he was still standing. Even though Officer Bill was a dead-on aim, to the point where blood was now pouring out of the young trucker's chest, neck, shoulder, and mouth, the young trucker was still staring wildly at him. The trucker coughed up blood, managed a painful smile, and wheezed out, "Bart!" There was a clicking sound. Across the street, the Exxon driver, who had scurried out earlier to see what had happened from the first explosion, was knocked off his feet on the second. The DOT scalehouse station was gone. The Exxon driver, with sauce from ribs still on his face, found smoking debris falling all about him. A part of the debris was with the head of Rita's dog, Jody. The head was smoking and seemed to be staring up at him with what looked like sad, half-closed eyes. 3 hours later, a trucker driving through the Badlands of South Dakota was watching a red sun going down. He was listening to a weather station warning of a snowstorm out west. The trucker cussed, realizing that he might have to put on chains when he got to California. The trucker kept his eyes on the interstate and scanned for a news station. On the news, it was reported that an explosion occurred at a Wyoming DOT scale house due to a careless trucker smoking too close to an Exxon truck. At that, the middle-aged trucker smiled, made a sarcastic wry, and said, "More like a trucker just blew his top for having to pay another fine." As the trucker then scanned the dial to see if he could find a good music station, he noticed a pickup trying to pass him. A car was coming from the west in the opposite direction. To keep from having the pickup in a head-on collision, the trucker took his foot off the accelerator, slowing his rig down. The pickup passed him up and merged onto his lane, just missing the car that was coming from the west, causing the eastbound car to let out a long interrupted honk and that dissipated into the east. The pickup suddenly put on speed and zoomed ahead. A minute later, the trucker gave up trying to find a music station and began eyeing some CDs he had in the lower compartment of his Volvo truck. Right when he was about to grab at one without looking, he noticed that the pickup that was now half-mile ahead of him was starting to act strangely. It started zigzagging, then began to slow down. Its emergency flashes came on, and it stopped sideways in the middle of the interstate. The trucker quickly applied the brakes to keep from hitting it, creating a loud squeal from the rig's brakes as it just barely missed the pickup by a few feet. "What the hell?" wondered the trucker. There was quick movement on the passenger side of the pickup. "Guy having a heart attack?" wondered the trucker to himself. Slowly, before he knew it, a guy from the passenger side of the pickup, wearing black leather gloves, jumped out and ran up onto the passenger side of the truck and pointed a gun at the trucker, shouting in an Arabic accent, "Let me in, or I start shoot." The trucker cussed and desperately tried to put the truck in first gear to try to make a fast escape. Suddenly, the entire cab was filled with thundering noise as bullets shattered through the window and started striking the trucker in the side, making the trucker grunt from each strike. The wheels of the pickup started smoking as they spun out violently on the interstate pavement to quickly leave the scene. It shot off west down the interstate as the man who did the shooting shattered out the rest of the window with the butt of his gun, and then quickly snaked in toward the dying trucker. The killer looked in the mirror of the driver's side and saw lights of vehicles approaching. He quickly gave the moaning trucker a shot to the forehead, hit the button to spring the seatbelt, and tossed the dead trucker to the side onto the middle of the floor. The killer then hit the emergency flashers, jumped into the driver's seat, and floored it. "Allah Akbar," he roared as the truck was shifted into higher and higher gears. The killer pulled out a walkie-talkie and shouted, "Praise be to Allah. We beat those cars that were behind us." A voice responded on the walkie-talkie, "Mashallah. Great timing, brother. At the next stop, we will provide you with the vest and the bomb. Allah willing, you won't have to be Shaheed like our heroic brother Muhammad Omar had to be today in Wyoming. Inshallah, you will be able to confront our last remaining tormentor of Allah's religion in one piece." Suddenly, the truck's Qualcomm-like device beeped. The killer pressed some buttons on it and discovered that the truck had stopped too suddenly, and he would have to be reprimanded for driving recklessly. The killer laughed. He then lifted the walkie-talkie up to his mouth and said, "This truck is being tracked by satellite. We're going to have to disable it at the next stop." "It will be done, Brother Atef." "It will be done, Brother Atef," said the voice on the walkie-talkie, and they drove off into the sunset. 24 hours after the pirating of the truck in South Dakota, 36-year-old Daniel Tashiro Kobashi was sitting on the lower sleeper of his 18-wheeler at a Love's truck stop on the outskirts of Twin Falls, Idaho. As electronica music played on the truck speakers, he found himself writing Arabic script on a golden painted paper plate. Daniel heard a clicking sound and saw that a CD he placed into the laptop a few minutes earlier was finished having data burned onto it. Although he was wearing plastic transparent gloves, he treated the CD as if he didn't want to get his fingerprints on it still. Daniel pulled the CD out from the burner, held it between both palms, and placed it in the middle of one of the paper plates. He then took off one of the plastic gloves, took a piece of paper, took a little piece of sticky tape, placed it on the sticky part of the tape on his naked thumb, touched it with his thumb over and over again in about 3 different angles until it was fingerprints crossing fingerprints. As Daniel did such a thing, memories of why he was doing it began to travel through his mind again. One of them was of a giant burning Sears Tower, then known as the Willis Tower, standing like a big black burning monster in the middle of Chicago, burning against the backdrop of a beautiful sunset. Crying people on the top roofs desperately tried to catch the attention of a helpless lone helicopter after 2 collided together when trying to reach them before the fire did. As such memories played once again in Daniel's mind, he taped the CD down with the tape into the middle inside of the paper plate of the painted paper plate. When using a knuckle to rub off whatever fingerprints were on the non-sticky side of the tape, Daniel reminisced further, remembering the Willis Tower, formerly known as the Sears Tower, tilting in a horrifying fashion against the sunset right before being struck at its base by another falling and burning Chicago skyscraper, and the great screams it produced from everyone, including Daniel, as the then black and glowing mighty tower roared down into smoke and flames of the city below. Daniel thought of how unbelievable such a scene was, so incredible that he wondered if what he was doing now, inside a big rig truck, was just a part of some crazy dream he might soon wake up from. Am I really doing this? He asked himself. Oh, how Daniel hoped it was just a nightmare he would soon wake up from, but he also knew it was something he wished many times before. Daniel continued to work away on his latest object, to be placed inside a truck stop restroom. He picked up the paper plate and examined his latest creation. As he examined it, Daniel thought about the president's response to such an Islamic attack on Chicago. Here, Daniel began to find himself growing in anger again, for instead of the president talking about destroying the Kaaba in Mecca and burying it in pig waste, or even going so far as threatening to nuke Mecca if another nuclear device was set off in the city, the president instead sat behind a table of the Oval Office talking about how great Islam was, talking about how Islam was a peaceful and tolerant religion. How it was a great religion that... I've got to stop it now. Yeah.